Sounds great. Thank you. Good stuff. All right, let's get started. Welcome everybody to the TB12 webinar series. My name is Brian Batchelor. I am the Director of Clinical Development here at TB12, and we really appreciate everybody being here today. As always, when we do the webinars, if you could make sure that you're on mute throughout the session, that would be fantastic. You can use the chat box down at the bottom of the screen, and we will do our best to get to all the different questions that you have for us, but by all means, fire the questions away. Today, we've got a little bit of a different setup. You can see on the screen that we're in two different locations, here in Foxborough, as well as at KOHR Golf over in Natick. So what I'm going to do now is sort of hand it off to Randy Ash, one of our body coaches out in Natick, and we'll get started. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks, Randy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. Like Brian said, my name is Randy Ash. I'm a body coach at TB12 Boston. But as you can see, we're not at our Boston Performance and Recovery Center today. I'm usually there at 699 Boylston in the back bay. But today we have a special treat for you. We're here at KOHR Golf in Natick with some awesome golf instructors. And everyone knows that golf is a little bit more fun when we're hitting the ball well. So these guys here are going to join us in showing some common faults. Some of them may be familiar to you. You might have experienced some of these before. So we hope you're looking forward to kind of getting some detail about common swing faults and how a golf instructor and a body coach usually approaches those and corrects them. So as a body coach, I work at the Performance and Recovery Center in Boston, and we work with clients of all ages, of all skill levels, to help them achieve their goals through the TB12 method, which we'll talk about a little bit before we get into the golf talk. So I'm going to let these guys here introduce themselves, what they do, and who they work with.
My name is Chris Hawley. I'm a golf instructor and elite academy coach here at KOHR Golf in Natick. I work with players of all ages and abilities, but I spend a lot of time working with our junior academy, which is kids from age 11 all the way up through college. So we spend a lot of time working with those guys, and yeah, it's a fun spot here.
Hi guys, my name is Daniel Guava. I'm the Director of Golf at KOHR Academy. I've been with the program for 8 years now, working alongside Chris and Luke. We have about 75 kids year-round in our junior development program. All have aspirations of playing at a high level, competing on a national scale, and hopefully playing college golf as well.
Hi everyone, Luke Chancellor. I'm a coach here at KOHR Golf and an elite academy coach here with our academy program. You'll hear the accent, PGA of Australia member, and I've been coaching for about 18 years around the world, but I've been at KOHR for a year and absolutely loving it so far.
Awesome. We appreciate you guys having us and graciously hosting us here at this awesome center. And we'll kick it over to the guys in Foxborough. A couple of my coworkers. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Thanks, Randy. My name is Chuck Gilman. I'm the body coach over at TB12 Foxborough.
And hi, I'm Matt Leeds, body coach also here at TB12 Foxborough, and really excited to join you guys and give you some good information today.
Back to you, Randy.
Great. So body coaches have all different backgrounds in the allied health world, and I'll let Matt and Chuck talk about their backgrounds a little bit. But what's great about TB12, we all come from these allied health professional backgrounds. We have this really great knowledge built up, and then we come to TB12 and we get to learn from Alex Guerrero and what he's been doing with Tom Brady to help keep him at his peak performance and keep him off the injured reserve. So we have some really great info. I come from an athletic training background and strength and conditioning. Chuck is a physical therapist, Matt's an athletic trainer as well, and we've all gotten different certifications that allow us to work with a wide variety of people, some of which are golfers, and we've had great success working with golfers because the sport requires a ton of pliability. So a lot of you have probably heard the word pliability if you follow the TB12 social media accounts or Tom Brady in his career. Pliability is your muscle's ability to fully contract and fully relax. And what that means for the golfer is that we're able to make our swing as efficiently as possible without having to compensate. So our muscles can do their job as best as they can, so we don't have to get into weird positions. We don't have to overuse muscles that we don't want to use. And we don't have to succumb to these swing faults, which we'll talk about today. So what we do at our TB12 Performance and Recovery Centers is we see golfers, among other people, and we teach them how to take care of their bodies so that they can continue to play at the highest level they want to achieve. So we use the TB12 method, which is a great holistic approach to healthcare. We're called body coaches because we focus not only on the physical limitations, but all different areas of wellness that are going to help you become the best golfer, best person you can be. So, Chuck and Matt, why don't you talk a little bit about what we do at TB12 with our golfers?
Say that again, Randy.
So,
Let's talk about TB12 Golf Performance Program. It's an 8-week program that what we do is we assess the golfer's mobility and possible movement faults, as well as get some objective numbers with the use of our swing analysis system, the TrackMan. And we provide pliability treatments and exercises specific for that golfer and take them over the course of 8 weeks to improve their performance and longevity of performance.
Awesome. And since the pandemic, we also started working with golfers virtually. So we offer a 3-week program that helps you get to your level of play that you want to achieve. You can virtually Zoom with a body coach and personalize your program to help your body feel better so that you can see these guys who are professional instructors and they can run you through drills and you won't have to worry about any physical limitations so that you can make the most of your time with these awesome professionals. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about some of the services you offer here and how people can benefit from taking a lesson with you?
Yeah, so we work a lot, like I said earlier, with players of all ages and abilities. So we have people coming through the door that have never picked up a golf club. And then we have players that are playing professionally and really good amateur players. So one of the first things that we do is check out their setup, and that includes posture, grip, aim, all of that, no matter what the ability level is. And that's super important because once we create that baseline, then we're able to move forward and work on their golf swing. If we see something wrong with their posture, that's going to have a huge effect on their golf swing. So what I love about this and the TB12 method is us working with a body coach with the same client, we can really improve, get their golf games improving, get them feeling better after a round. They're not experiencing any pain. So not only are we preventing injury, but we're getting people hitting the ball further, more solid, and really help them enjoy the game of golf a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. At TB12, we're focused on performance through recovery. So if you take an active approach to recovery, learn how to take care of your body, keep your muscles pliable, that's going to allow you to work with these guys and get your game to the elite level that you want to get it to. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some common faults of the swing that you may experience if you're at the driving range. You notice that you played on the course, or maybe you've seen your buddy doing this. Some of this might be familiar to you, some of it might be new. So I'll let Chris take it away and talk about probably the most common issue that they see with golfers of all ages, all levels. All right.
Yeah, so the first thing, as I was saying, we kind of monitor is posture, grip, and alignment. So with posture, I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. A couple of the main tendencies that I see when I set up here, with the pelvis, we see a lot of the C posture, which is when the pelvis kind of tucks here, almost like a cat here. And then we also see the S posture, where the pelvis moves back and creates a little arch in the lower spine. So both of these issues, if I'm going from C posture to S posture, are going to create a lot of inconsistency with the golf swing. So one visual I'm going to talk about here is if I set up here and I go to my C posture, so I'm kind of tucking my pelvis is level to the ground. So what we're going to do is we're going to imagine a bucket of water in my pelvis here, and it would be very level. Now, if I shift to S posture too much, that water is going to start to fall out. So that's really, really going to affect, what happens during the golf swing. And if I set up too much here, or too much here, I'm gonna have a very difficult time rotating, and we're gonna have a lot of trouble creating power. So one drill that I'm gonna have us do here, real simple. So we're gonna start off with our feet shoulder width apart. I'm going to extend my arms so the club's straight out in front of me. The first thing I'm gonna do is add a little bit of knee flex. And from here, I'm just going to tilt down from the waist until that club hits the ground. Now this is a really good posture right here. You can see my lower spine is pretty straight. If the spine isn't too curved and there's not an arch right there. So this is going to ensure that I get into a really good spot to hit some quality golf shots. Another thing I see often is a player's stance. They can set up decent here with the width, but I see a lot of knee flex. So even though the player feels more anchored to the ground and more solid, because my knees are very flexed here, I'm not going to be able to really rotate. So getting in that nice posture is going to allow my hips to rotate and do what they need to do. So the number one goal is to prevent injury here. We don't want to torque the lower spine too much by tucking that pelvis, but we also want to just be able to maintain a good spine angle here throughout the golf swing. So when I swing back and I swing through, I'm able to finish balanced and really pepper the center of the face here. So that's a very, very common thing. I tend to like to use a mirror to check where everything is. Another way to kind of think about that is if I get in this nice posture, I'm just going to let my arms hang from the shoulders. So as you can see, if I add more knee flex, I can't do that. Or if I punch, my hands move closer to the body. So if I just move the pelvis back, that's going to get my hands and my body in a position where I can make a good golf swing. So if we can ensure that we're set up properly before making our swing, the chances of you hitting a solid golf shot gotta go.
Awesome. So if Chris was our golfer coming into TB12, why don't you come back up here and show us those postures again?
Yep.
Let's take a look at what it's doing to his body and how it could probably cause injury down the road if he continues to shoot with some of these postures he demonstrated. So why don't you get back in that C posture? All right, so what we can see here, there's a lot of curvature of his spine. He's putting a lot of stress into his knees. And also he's exhibiting some tight hip flexors here. And he's putting a lot of stress on the low back. So as a body coach, we're gonna look at this posture and we're gonna say, okay, not only is he gonna hit inconsistent golf shots, but he's also gonna feel stress in his low back. He's gonna feel tightness in his shoulders. All right, so why don't we take it to Foxborough and they can show us some of the corrections that you can make through pliability and functional exercises to adjust that C posture.
Thanks, Randy. So to address the C posture, oftentimes, like you said, the mid back or the neck or the hips get a little tight. What we often use is a pliability roller or pliability sphere, which is a little different than what you normally would use with a standard foam roller or the cross ball. What it does is it creates vibration. The vibration improves the nervous system activation and improves the blood flow in these areas so that you're able to connect the mind and the body to allow that golfer to be able to elicit the appropriate muscle activation and relaxation that is needed today. So let's start with rolling out the mid back. Right? So take Matt down on the ground here. And we're going to make this as active as possible. Instead of just rolling over the foam roller, he's going to lay down. And he's going to roll the entire length of his mid back. So from lower mid back to upper mid back. And what he's going to do, as he rolls, he's going to flex and extend to create activation of these muscles while the vibration is on. He's going to work each side and do this in order to start to straighten out that spine, get into a more upright posture. Thanks, Matt. We're also going to worry about the pecs, because the pec muscles get a little tight, right? They'll tend to roll your shoulders forward, and that's going to impact the golf swing. So as Matt is on the ground, he can kind of roll the from side to side, getting all the areas of the muscles that allow him, when he's in that address posture, to be able to pull his shoulders back in a comfortable position without fighting the tension of those pectoral muscles. After we roll out, we're going to create an activation of these muscles through a couple of exercises. For someone who's a little bit more stiff, we're going to do, well, it's probably called open books, but we're going to make it active instead of open. So he's going to straighten out and broad the leg, right? He's going to roll, bring his arm, roll all the way back and forward and repeat that. Working on keeping his hips stacked and opening up that thoracic spine and the rest of the spine. The next thing we're going to do is make it a little bit more specific to the golf swing, is utilize a band and get into golf address position. He's going to set his core, right? He's going to hold the band, and he's going to rotate his trunk and maintain that posture and squeeze those shoulders back and repeat that throughout the swing process.
Making sure to keep your eye contact at the ground just like you would in a backswing.
All right, Chris, next swing fall.
All right, great. So that was how we can correct the C posture, which is awesome. So now, Chris, you have a client, you're now able to pull them in a more neutral spine position. Their bodies are going to feel better. And now we want to make sure that they can maintain that posture. So is there any drills that you want them to do to kind of work on at home so they don't have to, get back into old patterns?
Yep, absolutely, yeah. So one of the main things, like I said before, is using a mirror, because we can see a lot of things. So one thing that when we get in this nice setup position, when I pull the club out here and extend my arms, I add a little bit of knee flex, and then I'm just tilting all the way down. And one thing you'll notice is my armpits are kind of, if you drew a line from my armpits right down in front of my knees, that's going to go right to the balls of my feet here. So not only is that going to ensure my spine angle, but I'm going to feel very balanced over the golf ball. Versus a lot of times I see people can get too far on their toes, too far on their heels. So just really using a mirror and making sure when I set up to a club, letting the arms relax, I'm almost going to feel like my thumbs are underneath my nose. So obviously with golf clubs, the clubs vary in length. So it's a really good way to know if you're the right distance from the golf ball. Because I see a lot of people doing one of these or too close to it. And again, that's going to affect the strike. So just using a mirror to really make sure that the pressure in our feet is on the balls of our feet. Our pelvis is in a really good spot. And one thing I think you can do is you can just experiment with go from C posture, exaggerate, to S posture, too much, and try to just find a happy medium where you can stand over the ball and feel really comfortable and athletic.
Awesome. So try those tips at home, get in front of a mirror, see if that corrects your posture. If you notice you keep slipping into bad posture over and over again, maybe you can perfect it in the mirror, you come to a lesson, you think you knock it out and then it comes back. It could be a learned behavior from some of the things that you do in your daily life. Say if you drive a lot to work, if you have a long commute and you're in the car like this, or if you type at a desk and you notice yourself hunched over like this a lot, that would be when it's a great time to come see a body coach where we can do pliability treatments to help correct those learned behaviors. That way your body is more functional in life and in sport. So you can come back to your lesson and replicate good posture, go on the course and play well day in and day out. So that's a C posture. Really quick, you want to bring us to that S posture and we can see how that affects the body.
Yeah. So I'm just going to kick the pelvis back. So a little arch my lower back here. Yeah.
All right, so you can see that arch in this low back. A lot of times if you sit a lot at work, we get really tight hip flexors. And the hip flexor muscles attach from our lower 5 vertebrae all the way to the front of our hip. So they go through the abdomen region here, and they pull us into that arched, exaggerated arch position. What that's going to do is put a lot of stress and strain on your low back in both life and golf. So Matt and Chuck, can you tell us a little bit about how to correct that hip flexor tightness and some exercises to help keep better posture?
Absolutely. So oftentimes we said already, the hip flexor, low back tightness, common cause along with weak glutes and core. So we want to address that tight tissue. So we're going to work on the hip flexors first. So what we can use is our pliability sphere, and that's going to put the ball as it's vibrating right here as he lays over. So he's going to lay down. We're going to make this happen. So as he rolls, he's going to find some areas of tenderness, and he's going to rotate his leg back and forth in order to start lengthening that tissue. He's going to go as long as he needs to go until he feels a change in that tissue, whether that's a change in pain, a change in tightness, so be it. Another area that is tight is the low back. So you can again use the roller to be able to work the lower back and be able to address those areas. So as he rolls, he's going to work not directly over the lower back, but he's going to go just to the side of the lower back to get into deep muscles such as the QL and the lumbar extensors. He can move his upper body a little bit to simulate that rotation during the golf swing, right? Because we're trying to reprogram that mind-body connection of that golfer to be able to do what we want it to do. Another area that's often tight with these golfers is the quadriceps, those big thigh muscles. So he's going to roll out from his knee to his hip, the entire length of the muscle going from the outside to the inside. As he's doing this, what this is going to do, it's going to allow his hip to be open so that when he goes to step in that golf posture, he's not getting that excessive lumbar curvature. So some common exercises that we want to do for golfers, anything that addresses the core and the glutes. So the first thing we love to do is just a forearm plank, right? So Matt's going to get into the position of a typical plank, so he's going to raise up. Now, oftentimes people do this where they lock out their knees, right? And then they just tighten their core. Well, as what happens with this is there's no glute activation, there's a little bit more strain on the back and knees. If you slightly bend the knees and tuck that pelvis to that neutral golf position, you're going to get a little bit more activation, and you're going to get a little more facilitation of the glutes and core for that exercise. The next exercise is a bridge. Now, there's many ways to do a bridge, but we want to emphasize the ability to do it properly. So we're going to set our core by going into that neutral pelvic position. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flex the feet to kind of, again, force our weight to be distributed over the hips. And then he's going to work on lifting his glutes while maintaining that, not overextending his spine. And what I'm doing as a body coach is making sure that he's not overworking his hamstrings, and it's mostly a glute facilitation exercise. And to make it a little bit more golf specific, after they've been able to address that, we can use a medicine ball, 5, 10 pounds, depending on the athletic ability of the golfer. Right, Matt's pretty athletic here, so we're going to be in a golf press position. So from here, he's going to set his core. Now I'm watching to make sure there's good alignment. And what he's going to do is he's going to do some figure eights with the ball, maintaining this posture. So he doesn't lose this. It's an endurance-based exercise. So at 16, 17, and 18, he's not breaking down, becoming less consistent with the shots, and he's not having back pain. All right, back to you guys.
Awesome, great stuff, guys. So if you notice at home, all right, maybe I do arch my back a little bit too much, or if my shoulders are hunched a little bit too much, feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at golf@tb12sports.com and send us your swing, and we can figure out what may be limiting you physically from attaining the proper posture or any other swing faults that we're going to talk about. So Luke, I'll kick it to you next, and we can talk about another common fault that these guys typically see in their golfers.
Sure. Thanks, Randy. So carrying on with what Chris talked about, by getting a golfer into a reasonable and functional posture position, one of the next common swing flaws or characteristics that we see is what we would call early extension. Now, what Chris talked about was very much about dynamic posture, static posture. So that is, how well can we hold ourselves in a static position? Well, early extension is how well can we hold ourselves during dynamic, or how well can we hold our dynamic posture, which means if I drew, in a simple term, if I drew a line from kind of my hip to my ear, as I bend forward, and as I'm holding myself through my lower body, how well can I hold this line, or a few other lines which I'm going to talk about, how well do we hold that line during our swing? So another way you can measure early extension is if you imagine a vertical line from my rear here, or imagine that I'm right up against the wall, is how well do I keep myself up against that wall throughout the swing? So generally what we see this all the time, is we see people tending to lose their posture and then hence what we would call extend their body earlier than what we need them to. So we generally, in a golf swing, we will extend into a follow through, but certainly in terms of dynamic posture from the start of the backswing all the way down to impact, we do like to see ourselves maintain dynamic posture as well as we can. So we see golfers, you know, again, seeing that line, sort of that vertical line here, imagining that I'm up against the wall, we do tend to see golfers almost immediately come off that wall in the first part of their swing. And certainly if they don't do that, they will certainly start to do it at some stage during their downswing where they'll start to extend early. Now, one of the things that is so important about being able to maintain dynamic posture throughout the swing is we need this club in a golf swing to come down pretty consistently in the same area. With an iron, obviously we want the club to descend. With a driver, we want the club to actually slightly ascend. But if we are changing our posture so much during either the first part of the swing or in transition into the downswing, we really then are changing or creating some inconsistency in terms of the consistency that the club head works down. And that's a huge part of being able to predict a ball flight. And that's really what a lot of golfers come to us saying is, I want to be more consistent. Well, firstly, we would really, with what Chris talked about, with getting ourselves into a good posture, the next step would be seeing how well they can maintain their dynamic posture so that they don't actually early extend.
That was great, Luke. Awesome, thank you. How hard is it? I know a lot of you at home, it looks like a pretty simple task, right? Don't leave this line up here. But when you're moving quickly and you're rotating through that golf swing, getting your hips through, it's not an easy task to keep your hips on that line, right?
Right. Well, if you think about it, you know, when you're in a good posture position, as we were talking about a static position, well, now we're moving very quickly, and now the club is starting to move very quickly, and it is creating a lot of force as well. So we need to be able to control, to have some freedom, to have some range of motion throughout our pelvis, all throughout our body, to be able to create good dynamic movements. And you know, a lot of the times, because the club we're trying to get the club to go from behind us to back in front of us to hit the golf ball. Because that club is now very fast, it's quite heavy, and it is moving this way. So it is actually almost forcing us this way as well. So we need to be very pliable and very strong in certain parts of our body to be able to maintain that movement. So yeah, it is not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want that consistency at home, Luke mentioned two really important words, and that was both freedom and control in the hips, in the core. So to get freedom, what we do at TB12 is we improve our pliability, that'll improve the freedom, and then we reinforce that pliability with the functional strength and conditioning. And I'll let Matt and Chuck do that so they can show you how to free up your hips and how to control them so that you don't early extend in your swing.
Oftentimes, some of the areas body part-wise that we address around the hip are a few muscles. We address the lower back and the T-spine to help allow for that rotation, but we attack around the hip specifically. So we're going to hit the inner thigh or groin muscles, as well as known as the adductors. And that's going to lay down here. It's going to roll the length of the muscle. And as you also lengthen the muscle, you become very dense and tight. You sit a lot during the day, and that's going to limit our ability for our pelvis to rotate properly in the golf swing. So if they're dense and tight, right, you're going to feel a lot of discomfort when you do this. So what Matt's going to do is he's going to roll through this, find some areas of tightness, and he's going to work on kicking his leg in and out. And that's going to work on lengthening that muscle in order to allow for that pelvic freedom. Okay. Another area to work is so important, glutes. We keep saying glutes, 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 but they're so important to the golf swing. So Matt's going to work all the areas of his glutes. And this is why it's so important for vibration of the device. So as the device is vibrating, it's finding different areas to improve the blood flow there, and also the nervous system activation to allow for us to do what we do on a daily basis, and also for the golf swing. So Matt's going to roll all these areas. And he's going to really focus on getting the T. And he can also bring his leg down, and he's going to bring his knee towards his chest. And that active range of motion helps reprogram the brain and the body to move more freely. Oftentimes, when you see foam rolling, it's a very static type of movement. You just kind of hit an area and you move on. What we like to do is we like to create active movement in those areas to reprogram that system. And again, we would need the low back and the T-spine as they are an issue during this movement block. So one of the most important things that we look at for golfers is pelvic tilt progression. Now, first thing first is that pelvis needs to be able to move freely in both directions. And what you'll see, if someone has tight muscles of pelvis, the hip flexors, what you'll see is a shaking type of ability when we go to assess that. So if you're watching this video, stand on up into a golf dress position and try to rotate that pelvis forward and back. And if you feel yourself shaking, that tells me one of a few things. Either there's a tightness issue or there's a motor control issue, and we need to address that. So standing up, right, that's going to set himself, and show you from both views, he's going to flex and extend, right? Because during the downswing, our pelvis moves in multiple planes, but this is one of the most important. So he's going to be here, and he's going to work on addressing that. If that's difficult, or you still feel a lot of shaking, Matt's going to go all the way to the ground on his back. He's going to lay on his back, knees bent, kind of similar to the bridge position, and he's just going to rock his hips forward and back. In order to get there.
And you can use your hands to help guide you to work on that tilting, but we want to keep our upper back on the ground. We don't want you arching off the ground.
Okay. Another progression of this is on your hands and knees. And we're going to do the same thing. So if that was a little too easy, but the standing was a little too hard, you'll be able to start acclimating this. We're looking for the pelvis to do the motion, not the mid-back. Oftentimes you'll see like a tap cow. We're not looking for that. We're looking to isolate that pelvis to be able to do the motion. And you'll be surprised at how difficult this can be. And it's usually a quick fix with the right amount of tissue work and the right amount of exercises.
So some of these movements, think about jump starting a car battery, you just need to retrain that movement. So if you had problems, if you struggled with that pelvic tilting in the golf address posture, try these 2 progression steps, stand back up, do that again in the golf address posture, and I think you'll be surprised how much easier and
Awesome, thank you guys. So try a couple of those at home. See how the freedom in your hips feels. Can you do that tilt? Remember the bucket of water? Tilt that bucket forward and tilt it backwards, and see how much control you have over your pelvis. And from there, you can come back and try this golf drill to see if it helps with your early extension.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a couple. So firstly, you know, the concept of you can do this at home, and very much find a wall at home. A wall that maybe you don't necessarily like for one of them, so you can try and push into it, which is showing you that you're working against early extension. But firstly, if you imagine a wall, if I get myself into my posture, and if you imagine a wall where the wall is just away from my head, So from here, I'm less than an inch away. Now, if I'm moving my body during the backswing and I'm coming into the wall, it's fair to say that I'm already starting to push towards the golf ball. My balance is moving towards my toes, and that's really not a great position for us to start a good golf swing. So something, again, where you can make some backswings. If you are prone to seeing yourself on video start to move out towards the ball, just put your head an inch or so, or just less than an inch away from a wall, and then start to feel like you can make some backswings where you're being able to maintain your dynamic posture and not pushing yourself already too much towards the golf ball or towards the wall. The second part would be for a wall for your glutes or for your rear here. Simple exercise. Have your hands finger width apart like this, or flat like that. Put them up against the wall so you legitimately have this much space between your rear and the wall. And what you're trying to do then is during that backswing, as you move back, you're trying to allow your right glute to go up against the wall, and you should be able to do that. And then in transition, your left glute actually joins it onto the wall. And then as you start to go through to impact, your right glute will actually start to leave the wall as your left glute really tries to push up against the wall. So what we tend to see in that transitional area is, instead of the left glute joining the right glute up against the wall, we tend to see the left glute not doing that and the right glute starting to then push out towards the ball. And then we can start to see people early extending very quickly. So very important for you to continue to work into the wall with your right glute, let the left glute join it, and then start to let the left glute push back into it as you're starting to allow your right side to come through the ball. What happens with early extension, if you can see here with the angle of the shaft here, which Dan is demonstrating, with early extension, the biggest thing that tends to happen is the shaft starts to get out in front too quickly and starts to get very steep by the time we hit it. And you can see here, the lying angle of the club is not really great for us to hit a ball that's on the ground. So by being able to maintain your dynamic posture, you're able to deliver the shaft on a very similar line that it started with, hence, thanks Dan, hence bottoming the club out correctly rather than getting it like this way and bottoming out in the correct way. So the walls exercises are great exercises for you to help you with early extension.
Yeah. Awesome, Luke. That's a really good tip. You guys can try that at home. Luke, just do that back wall again and go back in your backswing.
Sure. Do you want me to do the club?
No, don't hit me. Great. Great. So he's just backswing. Look at how much rotation he has in his hips. If you have trouble getting your hips to open, that's when you got to back up. Start with the pliability, because if you're trying to compensate by maybe sliding in your swing or tilting with your spine, that's when we're going to start to see compensation patterns and eventually lead to injury. So Luke has worked on his pliability. He's seen us before at TB12, and we've been able to show him how he can get in that position. And he's strong enough and a good enough golfer. He's got the muscle memory built where he can continue to do that repetition after repetition. So that's why it's so important to work with body coaches to get you in the positions that you need to physically. That way you can take these tips and employ them on the golf field. All right, we're getting to our next swing fault. We'll let Dan take over here.
Hey guys, how you doing? I want to talk about something that piggybacks both off of what Chris and Luke are talking about, which is X factor, creating separation between your shoulders and your hips. So for just about every single golfer that we work with, they want to hit the ball further, but we have to start with the fundamental movements, make sure they're starting in the right position, and then it's really teaching them how they can separate their hip rotation and their shoulder rotation. The bigger difference we can make between our shoulders and our hips, we're creating more of a coil. If you think about an elastic, when you twist an elastic, you're creating this stored up power, which is then going to unload itself. So you're able to create a lot more natural speed. So if you're able to start in a good setup position with good posture, and then you're able to load properly around this right side and create that separation between the shoulders and the hips, you're going to be able to create a very powerful pattern to deliver the golf club from. For most of us, what we see is people are just trying to use their arms opposed to using their body, and they're either sliding and swaying, coming out of posture, or they're just not able to separate the upper and lower. So an exercise that I like to do with this is I'll put an alignment rod through my belt loops, and then I'll grab another alignment rod that I'm going to put on my shoulder plane, and I'll get in front of a mirror, and I'm trying to see how big of a separation I can create from my hips and shoulders. The bigger separation I can create, the more potential for speed.
Awesome. Great drill at home if you have some alignment sticks. Even if you don't, just try it out without them.
Yep.
And Chuck and Matt, why don't you show us at TB12 what we can do to create separation between our upper body and our lower extremity.
Absolutely. So some of the common issues movement-wise for someone who may end up having the swing, slide, and reverse right angle, as we discussed, was the inability to separate. But that's usually a result of what we see is from lack of hip mobility, lack of mobility through that lat, that lead arm lat, and some T-spine. So why don't we show you how we would roll out some of the lat, right, in order to improve this. So that's going to lay down. The lat is this big muscle that runs along the whole side here. And Matt's going to work the entire length. As he rolls, he's going to look for tender points. And as he finds them, we're going to start moving through some active range of motion. He's going to reach, extend, really try to lengthen that forward across his body in order to really try to simulate that ability for that arm to come across. He's going to work that as well as oftentimes his trail hip. So similar to the last one, he's going to work this, but we're going to show you a little bit of the difference. He's going to lay, as he rolls, he's then going to lay on his stomach. Lay on your stomach. So he's going to roll, work this area, but then he's going to go onto like he's rolling in front of his hips. And in order to get the side of his hip, what he can do is he can bend both knees, and he can roll his lower body along this as he goes up and down. So he's going to be able to get the outside of that glue, and he's going to come onto that hip a little more as he rolls that area to get the common hip muscles that become tight. Now, oftentimes that's not enough in order to create that ability for that mind and the body to be able to separate. So we want to go into some functional exercises to be able to do that. So real basic exercise is golf address, right? He's going to get in this position and he's going to do a core rotation. So his hips are going to remain stable. This is going to be connected to something around. He's going to work on the ability to rotate his trunk while squeezing his glutes, setting his core, and trying to keep his hips stable.
And making sure not to too much movement, because then we're trying to create that dissociation that Chuck was talking about.
So oftentimes I see golfers, they say, oh, I do something similar to this. So I say, well, you do it the opposite side. And they'll often say no. So it's going to be just as important to work left side and right side. The next exercise is we're going to go onto our hands and knees. And we're just going to do a bodyweight exercise where we're just going to work on the ability for our hips to remain stable. And this arm is going to reach under and back. Reach under and back. And he's going to work on that. His core is going to remain engaged, and he's just trying to create that separation of that upper and lower body. Another great exercise is the ability to move the lower body independently of the upper body, what we call the reverse lunge with overhead fold. So he's going to maintain his position,
So I'm gonna hold this band overhead. I'll just move this real quick.
And he's going to step back and reverse lunge, making sure he doesn't arch his lower back, keeping that neutral position and staying stable as the band's trying to pull him out of position. You can do this with the band pulling forward or the band pulling the arm the opposite way. This is going to create that ability for the upper body to remain stable as the lower body is moving. Then we can progress as they get further along in the program to something more of a power move, which is once they're able to learn that, they're able to go with a med ball, and they're able to get into that position, and they're able to associate the two and throw it against the wall, throw it against something explosive in order to be able to do that. And that's going to help emphasize and create power with dissociation during the golf swing. Back to you, Randy.
Really great drills, guys. We like those exercises and that pliability. And the theme here, separating the upper and lower extremity, being able to move those as two separate entities, but still bring them all together to create a powerful and efficient golf swing. Do you have any other drills, Dan, that you like to do for hip and shoulder separation?
Yeah, so again, with the alignment rod through the belt loops, what I like to do is I'll get into posture, have both the alignment rods parallel to one another, and I'm going to try to turn the hips and the shoulders in the same sequence as much as I can. And then once I get to a point where I feel like I can no longer turn around that right hip, I'm going to try to really separate the shoulders from the lower body. So the good part about this is it's going to help you load with the proper sequence, because loading is great, but if it's out of sequence, it's not going to be efficient in terms of consistency with contact. So again, just starting parallel, trying to turn the shoulders and the hips at the same sequence as much as the hips can turn, and then from there, really just trying to separate and load even further with the upper body.
Awesome. And go back in that position there when you're doing that drill, and then start again with the hips and shoulders.
Yep.
If you can get this hip further back naturally, right, without having to hesitate in his swing,
Yep.
You're going to be able to develop more power, more club head speed, and get those further distances, right?
Yep.
So if you're able to, stretch that elastic a little bit further, so to speak,
Yep.
it's going to fly even further.
Yeah, and I think you'll see there's a lot of different ways to swing a golf club. You'll see a guy like John Rahm, who his hips don't move too far off of the center, but he creates a tremendous amount of rotation with his upper. So as long as you can separate them, even if the hips aren't moving too much, you're going to be able to create a lot of power. But obviously, working with a coach like you guys and being able to create more freedom and mobility in the hips will definitely make it easier for you to load in general.
Absolutely, yeah. If you can already get that upper body rotation, being able to open that up even more with your hips is going to be an added bonus, and it's going to keep you safe and healthy throughout your golf career, so you don't have to start recruiting these extra muscles to get that power that you once had.
Yep. And you should be able to hit it further than all your bodies too.
Absolutely. That's great. We appreciate you guys out in Foxborough. Those are some really good tips. Before we close out, we can just kind of wrap up. What is the best benefit of coming to CORE? What do you guys like to preach the most about, your philosophies when training people?
Yeah, I mean, when you come to KOHR Golf, we have a great team here. And I think when you leave here, you have a clear direction in mind, and it's very simple of what you need to do. So we never want somebody coming here and leaving feeling confused. So we really try to spend enough time at the beginning of each lesson to figure out what your goals are as a golfer and as an athlete, and then we'll cater the lesson to each individual. I think sometimes people can get caught up teaching similar concepts, but we deal with all different levels of golfers and really trying to figure out what they want from each session. That helps us really understand what their goals are, whether they're more short-term or more long-term, and what they want to do in this game. And I think spending time at TB12 and us being able to communicate with one another is really going to help the customer and athlete improve.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've worked with a lot of shared clients, people that come to CORE for their golf instruction and come to TB12 to improve their body so they can come back here and keep getting better and improving. And getting to TB12, getting the hands-on pliability work, learning what in your body is preventing you from reaching your full potential is going to be so important for you to be able to come back to your golf coach and say, oh my God, my hips feel so much better. I haven't felt this good in so many years. Like, now how do I hit the ball further without, you know, affecting your shot shape or affecting your consistency? So it's a really great collaboration we have going on here. If you're not in the Massachusetts, Boston, Foxborough area, Natick area, you can work with us virtually too. TB12 has virtual sessions where we work with clients. You guys do virtual sessions as well? Yep. So you can team up with us virtually as long as you have a good setup where you can hit balls correct and a good setup where you can exercise, and we can help those physical limitations so that you can go and improve your golf performance and just have more fun playing. You know, like we said to start, everyone has more fun when they're hitting the ball well, when they're making the shots that they envision in their mind, and we'd love to help you do that. So without further ado, we'd like to open the floor to any questions. I'm going to open up the chat here and see if we can answer any that haven't been addressed already. Brian or Tim, if you guys have seen any questions pop up throughout, feel free to reach out here. So one question up here, do we teach one basic system or do we teach various methods? I'm not sure if they got to that in the chat, but I think we can all agree that we teach various methods. At TB12, it's all based on the individual. So if we look at your body and you have, you know, these physical limitations that prevent you from achieving your goal, we're going to work on that. It's all goal oriented. Would you guys see the same?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, very person to person. Yeah.
Sure, and that's the benefit of working one-on-one. When you come to core, I've come for a lesson myself. I work one-on-one with an instructor, and they look at my swing, they show me videos of how I can improve. Same thing when you come to TB12, we work one-on-one with a body coach, and we're going to be able to, you know, push towards your goals, whatever that may be. Anyone else have any questions, feel free to send them in the chat, and we're happy to answer.
Well, if there aren't any questions right now, always feel free to reach out to us at golf@tb12sports.com.
Awesome. And what's your guys' main contact here?
You can go to KOHRgolf.com. Our entire team, if you're looking to book a lesson, you can go on our website. You can see our schedules that are available. I think we have a great staff, so you'd be in good hands with whoever you choose. But if you have any other questions for any of us, our contact information is on the website. So you feel free to shoot us an email if you have any questions. We'd be happy to have you come out here. We have a public driving range, short game area. We have one of the best club fitters in New England on site here. It's called Cool Club. So you can even update your equipment and make sure you have the right stuff in the bag. And really, you'll get a chance to work on TrackMan and some of the most state-of-the-art technology as well.
And I see a question that came in from Catherine about how important is nutrition on the golf course. Nutrition for everyday life is huge, especially on the golf course. The ability to stabilize our glucose levels to control the inflammation is one thing, but for a golfer, it's important because it's a 4-hour event, and you don't want to have these peaks and valleys. So to be able to have proper nutrition before, during, and after, it will allow you to perform at your best and not get that sluggish feeling towards the end of the round, and be able to consistently play at your highest level throughout the entire round.
Awesome. Great advice. Another one here. Do you have any suggestions for wrist flexion? So the wrists are an important body part in the golf swing. You know, even if it's a subtle motion, it's going to have that whip factor. It's going to affect where the ball meets the club face, right, guys?
Yep.
So why don't you guys show them in Foxborough what you can do with the roller or the sphere to help with that wrist flexion and loosen up the muscles that allow your wrist to move.
So just like everything else, we can work the muscles of the forearm that really help with wrist flexion and extension. So what Chuck is doing here is he's working the entire length of the muscle from his elbow to his wrist. And after you find a couple tender spots and you roll them out,
You also want to take your wrist to active flexion. So that's that neuromuscular, that mind-body connection that we were talking about. Golfers, it's very important to work the inside of the forearm, but also we don't want to neglect the outside because everything works together. So same thing, he's going to find any tender spots. He's going to go up and down with the wrist, and then he's going to restore it by going back, working the full length of the muscle again.
Awesome.
That's a very, very good question, Dennis.
We're going to show them what they can do with the club too to help with their wrist flexion.
Yeah, so the wrist joint can move in two directions. So this would be flexion and this would be extension. And then there's also ulnar deviation and radial deviation. So just understanding that movement and how that can affect the club face. So one thing we see quite often, and it goes hand in hand with early extension, is when I go back to like a 3/4 swing, my left wrist right here is relatively flat. So if I add flexion, you can see that we can see more of the club face here. So that's effectively closing the club face. So what we see as a common issue with a lot of the slicers, they will come back and they will add extension here. So that really opens up the club face. So what the golfer needs to do to square the club up on the back of the ball is sometimes they will early extend in order to do that. So identifying, you know, whether you need flexion, extension, and really making sure that that club face is in a good position to hit some shots from, that's vital to the golf swing, and it's a very simple thing to understand. So really making sure that, you know, the grip is correct, and that's going to be something that we monitor during a golf lesson as well.
Awesome. Yep. So that's pliability for the wrist and some good feedback of what the wrists do to the club face and affect the ball. Another question, can you have too much hip turn? Typically, that's not the ailment that we see. If anyone has too much hip turn, great on them. You could just pause it at a good, you know, maybe 30 degrees of internal rotation. But generally, I think we can all agree.
Yeah, I think you can never have too much. It's being able to stabilize that movement. It's being able to understand when it needs to rotate and when it should be stabilizing. So, you know, we generally tend to rotate the hips reasonably early during the backswing, as Dan was saying, but then it's the hips, sort of, in my opinion, or in our opinion, it's the hips roll to stabilize as the torso and arms complete the backswing. So what happens is, if we don't stabilize that rotation, if we continue to rotate, then we're sort of continuing both together. We're not creating that stretch that we would like, and hence we're going to then start to not sequence correctly as we swing down. Versus if we can stabilize the hips to the top of the back, or the pelvis to the top of the back, so you give us a much better chance of sequencing correctly on the way down to the ball.
Yeah, physically having too much hip rotation would be a great problem to have. We could always work down from there. With a lot of people, it's about improving it more and more. So thank you everyone again for joining us. It's about time here. So any questions, you have our contact information. You guys want to sign off in Foxborough?
All right, thank you very much for having us.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us. That was a pleasure.
All right. Everyone have a great rest of your day.